to in next presentation talk about the Northern Passway project according to Constellation section. This is something that I actually led the business case for the whole life of business case from beginning point of, from strategy to preferred option. And I'm just going to talk through the same processes that we just discussed. I'm going to show you what they mean in practice. Yep. Right, so according to Constellation, the Northern Passway, it has been in the news over past few months. You probably have heard that this has been it has a very long story. So people wanted to add walking cycling to Harbor Bridge. They started as a initiative called the Sky Pass. They originally intended to add like a clip on the one side of the bridge so people can walking cycling. It was like a private initiative, and to fund for that, they had this idea that people pay to use it, and that could pay back the money they invested on it. So interestingly, cars could drive for free on Harbor Bridge, but people walking cycling has to pay for it. So it was a little bit messy. So new government, the TA took the project on board, rebranded as a Northern Passway. This was supposed to be a kind of cycling highway project. It's got like Northwestern Cycle Pass. If you have seen that before, this was supposed to be a seamless connection from Albany all the way through to city, so people could cycle alongside the motorway. The northern part, which is called Constellation to Albany, is part of the NCI project. It's actually currently being built. It's going to be delivered next year. The southern part was part of the I guess the most famous part of the Northern Passway. That consists of the Sky Pass on the Harbor Bridge, and also Sea Pass, which continues all the way to Esmond Road. So these two sections are going to be called Section 3. My project was the middle section, which was filling the gap between the Sky Pass and NCI. So the idea was to continue the cycle pass, but we don't know what route should we take. To add to this complexity is the first section ends on the left side of the motorway, the northern part ends on the right side of the motorway. So we have to cross motorway at some stage at least once. Okay, so there are some objectives. We want to create a seamless walking cycling connection, provide options, reduce traffic, like all these usual suspects that you can expect from a project. At the moment, the walking cycling network in this area is so patchy, and it's not forming a network. It's just pieces of project that has developed in different times without having a very integrated kind of views. They serve their own single piece, but they don't act as a network. They don't connect. They can't be considered as a feasible alternative to cars. So mostly used for a recreational or very short distances. And not many people in North Shore, expectedly use walking cycling for day-to-day jobs. A similar project to Northern Passway is the Northwestern Cycleway. In terms of the length, they are similar, and we are expecting them to work in the same way. Like street network, cycleways also have their own their own roles in the network. Some of them are more movements, and some of them are more access and place kind of links. Northern Pathway is kind of more movement, commuter kind of responsibility. Everything else hooks into that, and people can use this as can see that as a cycle highway. The demand for the cycling part is expected to be 1,500 daily cyclists, but it's not consistent all along. So the more we go to the north, the demand is going to be reduced. I mean, understandably, people converge where the Section 3 or the Sea Pass and Sky Pass are, because that's the place that connects the North Shore to the city. So that place has the most demand. As you go up, the demand will probably be less. Again, as we talked in the previous slides, we have a strategy case, indicative case, and business case. And then so it's a strategic indicative case and the detailed business case. And then if the funding goes through, we've got the detailed design, which is called the pre-implementation phase, detailed design and consenting. And then construction phase is called implementation phase. So at for this project covers strategy, indicative, and detailed. Strategy actually exists in the program business case. So this project is a spin-off a wider program called Auckland Cycling Program Business Case, or ACPBC. We love, I guess, acronyms. They call acronyms, right? I don't know. They call these letters in NZT. A lot of them: IBC, EBC, NLTP, ACPBC. So there are like numerous of them. Good luck with learning all of them. I don't know half of them. Anyway, so this business case had this strategy from the ACPBC, but reconfirmed and reviewed the strategy. So we had another ILM and developed new problem and benefits for this. But these problem and benefit are inside the scope of the program that was delivering this business case. We for the first workshop ILM, we had the key stakeholder workshop, and then define the benefit and outcomes. Again, the next workshop was for the long list. We defined the long list. Long list, we didn't use EastTool here because there was not much options we could connect these two ends together. We reviewed every possible option in a workshop and realized which one of them are not going to be valid options, and just disregarded them into the first workshop. In the second workshop, we had this MCA. We couldn't put everyone into one room. So for the benefit part, we had one workshop. For the feasibility part, we had another workshop. For the finance part, for the construction cost part, we had another workshop. So instead of having people like engineers that are going to talk about the construction part sitting in a half a day workshop listening to guys that were talking about benefits, we just decided to had different workshops, different smaller workshop. So one thing that you want to I guess consider later in your career, that the MCA workshop could be a little bit boring and long. So it's good to find ways to make them a little bit more engaging and less boring. The next phase was the shortlist to the preferred option. Again, we had we didn't use here AST or appraise or some, I forgot the name, but we used a detailed MCA here. So we had for the long list, we had a very light MCA, and we had a detailed MCA for the shortlist, which basically worked as a AST tool. In this long list option, I don't have the map here, but basically we defined every single street that could use to connect C pass to NCI, any single street that we could put a cycle bay in that, and we disregarded everything that doesn't align with the strategy or the outcome, and the green ones are the only segments that work. Notice that there are some segments here that they are green, but because they don't connect to anything else, they will be disregarded anyways. The workshop, so we this is the photo of one of those workshops. So we have people coming over, we had all these maps on the wall so we can discuss the details, and if they have any concerns they could provide. One of the key concerns was the Smith Bush. It's a very sensitive ecological area in the alongside the motorway, so we couldn't go around it in any of those long lists. So we ended up, all the options ended up somehow impacting that. So we had to engage with the stakeholders to limit or minimize the impact on this sensitive ecological area. So this is the shortlist option. One way is to just go from left side of the motorway all the way up to, and then cross to Constellation Station. Another one is going to the right of the motorway, going around these stations and also connect to Constellation. We could technically choose pieces and mix and match to create a preferred option. So we could go for a left, then go to right, and then go to left. But we decided that we realized that if we stick to the one side of the motorway, it's going to generate better result for us. On the right side of the motorway, we had this issue that each of these stations have this future plans that they want to expand. So if we go around them, we have to include all those future plans. We had also a Smells farm here that didn't really like commuters going through their businesses. So this was one of the key stakeholders. And so we had to disregard the options on this side of the motorway. And there was other issues such as property acquisition and also having enough space to put the cycle bay. That means that everything ended up going through one side of the motorway. So this is like the benefit and also issues and costs for each of these single pieces of the options. So after we evaluated all of them, we ended up putting everything on the one side of the motorway. So here, this is the Smith Bush area that is ecologically sensitive. We had enough space to put the cycleway without actually going into the Smith Bush, but still we had some marginal effect on the Smith Bush. On the right side, we had to get some land from the Smith Bush, was practically is unconsentable. So we just had to disregard that totally. Here, another pinch point, if we want to go on the right side of the motorway, these properties, we have to acquire some of these properties. On the left side of the motorway, we have enough space. We can just put, there's just a little bit we have to go either through this reserve or take some part from the shoulder. So that will be decided in the implementation phase. Okay, so this is the preferred option. We stick on the one side of the motorway all the way and then create a bridge, connect to Constellation. And here again in the Constellation, we have the future plans to expand. So the way we connect to Constellation has to consider those plans and also have stages that is along with the plan. So at the moment, we just use some facilities that are not being used as there are some roads that are not being used, so we can use them as a cycleway. Once they start expanding the Constellation Station, we just switch to different roads and start building. So the staging part has to sync with what we have for the Constellation Station. This is 80 asset. The rest of them is also, we have to sync with 80 for this delivering this project. Again, in terms of the cost, the money part. So once we started the project, still economic evaluation manual was in use. So we had to follow that manual. But at the end of the business case, MBCM or monetized benefit cost manual was out, which we could use as a basis for the cost benefit analysis, which helped us a lot to get more from the benefits. So it improved the BCR to almost 1. But there's also some issues. This one is actually P50. So as we discussed, we have to also include risks. So if other risks actually become an issue and impact the project, this cost benefit ratio definitely will go to less than 1. Here is the expected the money that we have to spend over the next 4 or 5 years to implement this project. Again, one of this problem with this project was the low BCR, which made it very less attractive for the people at NLTP to include it into next NLTP, which is the current NLTP. So this project didn't end up in the NLTP. Said that, you probably know that the Section 3, which is the Sky Pass and the Sea Pass, didn't get the funding from the government, so they decided to put the clip on. The didn't work. They decided to build a bridge, a separate bridge for walking cycling, for almost $800 million. There was so many opposition to that, so they scrapped that, and the Section 3 is not going to happen. So much of this project, so much of this benefit that you see here, 152 million, is actually happening if the Section 3 was there. So if that we discard that benefit from the BCR is going to be much lower than this. So if the Section 3 was happening, we had a little bit of hope that this project could happen, but without that, there's not much point building this piece of road that doesn't connect anywhere to anywhere. One of the good things that we developed during this project was the network integration map. So we started to bleed into the 80s network, try to find out how we can maximize connection, and therefore how we can maximize the demand. There are so many points that they are very low cost, low risk kind of investment. So we just add a small connection or add one bridge or one ramp, and you connect to what is AT is building alongside the motorway or the existing network. So with these small connections, we can maximize the demand for the for our project. However, we can't use this as a benefit and include that into our BCR. The reason is this is something that we have to work with the AT to calculate the cost and also calculate the benefits. And that this is beyond the scope of this project. So this part, even though that we did it and we suggested these connections to AT, it's not going to help us much for improving the BCR. Next steps, I'm not sure how update these are, but basically we are going to submit this project to board. This didn't go through to ATAP and therefore NLTP. This is not going to be, there won't be money. We try to get some money to at least do the design phase. So we have the designs for future. If bridge for any reason was built, then we have the designs already there. We can just bring them back and build it. But because the PCR is low, there was not much enthusiasm in the team to fund even for the design phase. So that means that once we finish, we are going to get it endorsed and leave it for now. Once the situation has changed and this project, for by any chance, get prioritized, I don't know, maybe a new GPS, new government, and then we ask for funding and go for the design phase. But because there's going to be a few years gap here, anyone who wants to pick up the project later on, they have to review what we have done and refresh that. Hopefully the refresh part is not going to cost much money, but we have had experiences that because the business case becomes too old, actually redoing the business was a more proper option than refreshing the old business case. Okay, this is all I had for today. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions about? I mean, it's a little disheartening. It's good to hear. I think it's really good to hear the backstory behind how this planning plays off, because what we hear typically is what we hear through the press, which is, oh, you know, this didn't work out and it's just not going to happen. Everybody gets their hopes up over a project and then it just gets, taken away. And we don't really know the full, everything that goes into it. I mean, I'm sure, Saeed, for you, it's really difficult also putting so much time and effort into planning a project and building a business case only for it to be kind of taken off the table. And so I think it's really interesting to hear kind of just how much really goes into this sort of thing.
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy and time to build such, and it's not a very cheap process. I guess for this one we spent almost 1.5 million to get to the preferred option. But the point is, we are not delivering enough in walking, cycling, and we just the delivery in walking cycle is one of the big problems in this activity class. So we want to work hard to make sure that we have plans. So once the budget is there, we just start building stuff. But yeah, there's this gap between planning and building, which sometimes slows down the process. Sometimes we make all the way and to the design phase, and then everything gets cancelled. And so going back to the review, to the design board, putting together a new plan, and then sometimes the money just stays there and then gets used for other activities. So walking, cycling doesn't really get much in the transportation. That's very sad. I guess I hope this change over the next 3 years, but that has been the case for last 3 years at least.
Do you, Said, have a sense of what percentage of the business cases that you as an agency develop never end up going anywhere? Is that a high number? Or, I mean, I would imagine by the time, for most projects, maybe walking and cycling has been a little more precarious, but for most projects, by the time you actually get to developing a formal business case, the project is fairly certain. But what percentage do you get to that point of developing the business case and doesn't go forward?
I don't know exact number, but I know like there's hundreds of them that is in the archives that didn't get the funding. but it is sad, but at the same time it's kind of understandable. It is better to spend like $1 or $2 million on a business case and realize this is not going to work, instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money on a project and then ended up with like ghost towns or ghost infrastructure. So I'm sure you know in US we have had some projects like light rail project, for example, that nobody uses. It's a very big waste of taxpayers' money. But even though I'm very sad this project didn't go through, I understand that we we were very honest and we did a really good job to show that this project doesn't have very high BCR. Another thing about BCR is BCR wasn't developed around the walking cycling kind of project. It was developed around cars and driving modes. So
Mm-hmm.
It comes from this utilitarian perspective to that doesn't necessarily fit the social, I guess, impact of the walking and cycling. So it doesn't consider. I think that it doesn't consider all the benefits that walking cycling provides. There are different. There are some, I guess, discussion in the industry to develop a different BCR framework for cycling that gets more benefits into account. But by the time that we developed this, that wasn't available. Hopefully, if it gets reviewed, we have a better framework for the BCR. But based on what we have at the moment, this doesn't really get very high BCR. Yeah, I guess this could be some structural, I guess, problems with the BCR and business case. There's a new team, mobility team in the NZTA. They try to be more innovative and use different ways around business cases, use different kind of procurement and different kind of delivery models. So one of them are tactical urbanism. They tend to use very low cost, low risk job, and then see if it gets used, then they make it more permanent infrastructure. So actually delivering something to show that this could happen with a minimal investment, and if it didn't get used, then it's not very huge cost to go back and scrap that. So that's another way that people have been working around to see if they could get around this low delivery rate, but still we are far behind.
You brought up an important point. I think it's worth kind of reiterating is the fact that the BCRs were really developed around what the benefits would be from a vehicle-focused point of view. I know that there's some emissions cost in some of it, but can you kind of elaborate a little bit on what is left out? I think, like, I imagine the cost of crashes to some degree is built into that, or a reduction in crashes, but larger climate change cost, health costs, are those things generally left out of the analysis?
So the new benefit cost manual that NZTA has developed, it covers a lot of these. I'm just bringing this on. So I guess it was August last year that the new monetized benefit and cost manual was published. This is going to be in line with GPS and also the new what's called the framework for the street outcome framework. Monetized and non-monetized. If I could bring the non-monetized one, there's a good. I will share the link with everyone. If I put it in the chat box, probably everyone can see that, right?
And I'll copy it over. I'll share it with the rest of the class too. Perfect.
So we have this summary table in non-monetized manual. So the outcome that Ministry of Transport has put as an outcome framework for the transportation has fills the first column, and then it breaks it into the benefit cluster and each benefit. Then it goes to the measure and also the cash value, the dollar value for each measure. Some of them doesn't have the dollar value; they are non-monetized, but some of them have. So emissions, as you mentioned, is part of the monetized one. So they actually monetize the environmental impact of these projects, but still it helps. It improved the benefit for this project, but it wasn't good enough to make it go much over one. It's just like roughly stuck on one. That's said it is the P50. Like, what if we expect everything goes as planned? So if something goes wrong and becomes an issue, the PCR becomes lower than one. So
yeah, it's interesting. I think most of the values that are captured are around the potential health impacts of inhalation of smog, essentially, and particulate matter, rather than like the larger global CO2 costs and things, which would be really hard to monetize, but could have a big impact potentially.
Yeah, I mean, the weighting also important. If the weighting of the environmental impact was higher, then the benefit would be a little bit higher. So we gave equal weighting for each GPS, I guess, part, but that's also could impact the outcome. So if you 90% on the emissions, then the weighting, the benefits becomes much higher, because everything that has low emission becomes prioritized to anything else. So it just depends on the ideology, on the framework, and how transportation authorities want to deliver, and that goes to the who gets the votes in the political area.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, even as objective as kind of accounting can be, there's still a lot of subjectivity into the process, and it can be influenced in a number of ways. Without me asking all the questions, does anybody else have any other questions about either the specific project or what goes into the BCRs or the business case? I feel comfortable with that so far.
I had another question. It was about, you said how it was difficult to interact with AT to make a BCR that might include the benefits of connecting with the AT network. Does that affect like a lot of projects, the inability to connect with multiple agencies?
I think that was a mistake that we did in the beginning of the project. So we defined the scope of the project that connects the northern part to the southern part, like section 1 to section 3. And we didn't really had a network. We didn't go for a network like for the whole North Shore. So that would cost us a little bit more. But having a network view means that we had to get AT as a partner in this program, in this project, rather than as a stakeholder. So we developed a project and had AT on board as a stakeholder and informed them and had their comments. But working with AT as a partner, that could help us a lot to have more, I guess, broader vision, to see a bigger picture here. In that way, we could add those benefits into our calculations. But you know, once we have like once we make the scope bigger, that means we have a bigger project and we have to put more money here. I mean, if I go back, I definitely will do that and ask for more money. I knew there was money available there, but the scope of this project wasn't defined by me. It was defined for with the previous NLTP team. And I just got it. I got it as it is.